So we are reading Water by Dr. Batman Gilich. We are on chapter 10, page number 132 of the PDF.
Serotonin, the foreman of all neurotransmitters. When tryptophan gets across the blood-brain barrier and reaches the brain side of the divide, it is quickly picked up and converted to a number of neurotransmitters. The best research transmitter produced from tryptophan is serotonin, conductor of the orchestra in all brain activity performed by the resident neurotransmitters and master controller of body functions.
So again, tryptophan, okay, it's an amino acid, which when it goes into the brain, the neurons can convert it into neurotransmitters to send messages throughout the body. And serotonin is one of the most popular and the most used neurotransmitter in the body system.
A tryptophan byproduct that is the rage of the town and the media because it is available without prescription and is used as a sleeping pill is melatonin. In the past, tryptophan itself was used in this capacity before it was taken off the market and the deck was cleared for the introduction of an antidepressant drug called Prozac.
So again, serotonin, melatonin, these are very important neurotransmitters and chemicals which are used in the body system. Tryptophan can be used for various other things also, but naturally the drug companies, right, they want to manipulate and to get control of the entire system. So Prozac is a like an antidepressant, right? It cools you down, but it stuns your brain, right? So Prozac, because Prozac was being introduced, tryptophan was taken off the market.
While tryptophan makes no serotonin at a much cheaper cost, Prozac is touted to stop the rapid neutralization of serotonin once it is secreted at the nerve clefts. Why? Because people with depression have low brain serotonin levels.
So people with depression, the serotonin levels are less, right? So serotonin actually is uplifting. If there is less serotonin, then you start to get depressed.
Many of the problems in human physiology and the establishment of stress in the body are the consequence of the disproportionate transfer of some materials into the brain. In certain circumstances, some amino acids that have to reach the brain cells to be used for making chemical messengers do not reach their destination in sufficient amounts or quickly enough to cope with the demand. The two main causes of shortfall in the delivery of the primary materials are dehydration and the overuse of the respective amino acids in other capacities. Dehydration causes problems with the transport process across the blood-brain barrier.
So again, if dehydration is there, we've seen that it works with hypertension. The blood volume starts to get reduced if there's dehydration in the body. The transmission of chemicals becomes reduced because the water is not reaching all parts of the body, and especially the brain, right? So if the chemicals are not reaching the brain, how can the brain produce the various chemicals that it produces from these amino acids to create what it needs, right? So again, dehydration is a huge problem.
Tryptophan is vitally important to the human body. It is an essential amino acid. From tryptophan, serotonin, tryptamine, indolamine, and melatonin are manufactured. Tryptophan cannot be manufactured by the body and has to be imported from the foods we eat. This is the reason it is called an essential amino acid. From tyrosine, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and dopamine are manufactured. 6 neurotransmitters and 1 hormone transmitter, melatonin, become affected when there is dehydration. to the level of producing symptoms such as pain or asthma. The reasons for the loss of these vital elements are simple.
So again, tryptophan can get used in producing 6 other chemicals which are vitally important for the body system.
When there is not enough water to detoxify the body through adequate drainage of the tissues and eventually urine production, the liver uses these 2 amino acids as antioxidants.
So now this is important, right? If the neurotransmitters, I mean, if adequate water is not there, then what happens is that the liver has to substitute the water that it uses for detoxification process by breaking down the amino acids to detoxify the body system, because water is one of the most important ways in which the body detoxifies itself through the process of urination, right? It takes out the waste material from the body. If that is not there, then it has to be neutralized using amino acids.
What are antioxidants? The nearest simple explanation can be seen in the way field lavatories are used without plumbing or drainage. The septic tank of the John contains a chemical that deodorizes, sterilizes, and sanitizes the refuse that gets into the tank when the toilet is used over and over again until the tank becomes full and has to be emptied by septic pumps. There is a similarity of function between the chemical in the tank and the way the liver uses tryptophan and tyrosine as antioxidants to detoxify the byproducts of chemical reactions in the absence of adequate water for washing toxic things out of the body. This is the crudest way of showing how dehydration can cause severe damage to the human brain. It can cause even the brain to malfunction because the raw materials the brain needs becomes unavailable. From the breakdown of tryptophan, the liver also releases local oxygen that is needed for the function of its cells when the liver is insufficiently supplied.
So again, if the blood is not reaching the liver, oxygen will not be there. The liver will want to produce oxygen in any way, right? So it breaks down the amino acids to create the oxygen. And also, when detoxification is something that we need to neutralize the toxicity that is created due to the metabolic process. And if water is not there, then the body has to resort to substitute methods, right? So that's why hydration becomes again extremely important.
Histamine, the first neurotransmitter in our body. When the sperm fertilizes the female egg and a new living person begins to form, it has the ability to invoke the action of histamine. It must do so because of histamine's many nursing responsibilities. It is a wet nurse to growing cells. Histamine will bring the new cells water and nutrients from its direct influence in expanding the blood and serum circulation. Histamine will rhythmically pump feed the new cells with potassium. It is this feeding program that matures the new cell until it divides and divides yet again and again until a new life in the form of a fetus comes into being. Histamine is a most noble element in our body.
So again, we've talked about this before. Histamine is the water regulator in the body system. Where the water will go, how will it go? It's all monitored by the production of histamine.
Histamine also has responsibilities in antibacterial, antiviral, and anti-foreign agent, chemicals and proteins, defense systems in the body. At a normal level of body water content, these actions are held at an imperceptive or unexaggerated level. In a dehydrated state of the body, When much histamine is produced, an immune system activation will release an exaggerated amount of the transmitter from histamine producing cells.
So again, if there's dehydration, then more histamine is produced because the body feels that it needs to really regulate and monitor the water supply throughout the body system.
The excess histamine is held in storage for its drought management program. Yet, its immune system stimulation will cause a greater than required release of the agent. Histamine producing cells release their histamine reserves and they immediately begin to divide and create new histamine producing cells. Now, more cells are formed and more histamine is manufactured for its immediate release. This mechanism is designed to cope with emergency water needs or immune system activity. When water comes to an area, it brings with it all the other substances that are also needed. Water is the common factor on which all the regulatory systems are standardized.
So water brings a lot of things into various parts of the body. Now, if there is dehydration, then the water doesn't reach, and these other nutrients, etc., which are required in various parts of the body don't reach it. So again, this results in more and more histamine getting produced, which is why in many times in many diseases, etc., they give you antihistamine drugs, right? But the cause is dehydration. It is not about histamine. It is more about dehydration.
It has been shown that in more watery solutions, the histamine producing cells lose their histamine granules and stop its manufacture for some time. Thus, water seems to be a most effective natural antihistamine. In conditions such as asthma and allergies, excess histamine action is the main problem. These conditions are related and should be regulated with an alert and determined increase in water intake.
So again, in asthma and allergies, it is better to increase water intake rather than taking antihistamine drugs.
The natural anti-asthma and anti-allergic reactions to excess histamine and adrenaline or its chemical substitutes. The natural and preventive procedure to avoid attacks of asthma or allergic reactions is without doubt an adequate hydration of the body over a long period of time.
So again,
Ade-
hydration is the key.
Adequate water intake will reduce the overproduction of histamine in the body. A water intake of 1 or 2 glasses will cause stimulation of the sympathetic nervous system that secretes adrenaline for at least 90 minutes. This is the main way that water will immediately counteract histamine overactivity. Another solution is to exercise, to again enhance the natural activity of adrenaline in the body. Adrenaline is the natural antidote to excess histamine production.
So when we take action, when we are exercising, etc., adrenaline gets secreted in the body and it takes care of the histamine. Because when we exercise, again, circulation is definitely improved.
Water, the energizer of the brain. It needs to be understood that even if the outer skin of the body is comparatively dry and firm, the inner parts of the body should be waterlogged. All the cells of the body live as though they are in an ocean of salt water. Any function of the body has to obey the natural maritime laws. All transport and communication systems inside and outside the cells of the body are designed based on a water atmosphere, much like the habitat of fish in the ocean.
So again, whatever the external environment is, it is definitely going to affect the transmission of neurotransmitters and chemical signals throughout the body system.
All functions of the body depend on the basic relationship of its pump systems to water. Imagine people living in rural areas next to a river. Imagine the technology is so advanced that each house has its own small hydroelectric power generation system that is installed on the river. The flow of water in the river has the power and ability to turn the water wheel of the turbines that manufacture electricity for the houses. At present, the turbines made for this type of use are installed separately from their water wheels. The turbines have to be kept in a dry area, and the electricity they generate is wired to the house and distributed. In its use of hydroelectric energy for its cell functions, the human body has advanced beyond human imagination, a most enviable achievement. It has designed special turbines, as it were, that are installed in the water wheels themselves, and they are submerged deep in the waterways.
So again, production of hydroelectricity using water is done because these turbines, they're talking about these turbines, are installed in the cellular membrane of the cells. So when the water goes in, it turns the turbines, creating hydroelectricity in each and every cell. So the analogy that he has used here is a river and homes. So our body system and our blood flow, etc., can be termed as the river, and the cells can be the houses. So when the water goes into the cells through the various systems, it automatically generates the hydroelectricity required for the cell to function properly.
Miniaturizing the turbines in this way makes another big breakthrough in power generation in the body. As a result of this breakthrough, it has become possible to install each turbine where hydroelectric energy is needed. This makes it possible to economize on the need to use wires or electrical insulation to energize the whole body from its hydroelectric source of energy. The energy generating batteries of turbines is installed where energy is needed to perform a function. These hydroelectric energy generating units, which also perform a number of other functions, are called cation. Cation pumps. The human body has made another enviable advancement. Normally, in industrial settings, power is generated in one spot and used in another spot to turn motors that perform particular functions. In the body, the water-dependent, energy-generating components and work-performing functions are installed in the same unit.
So it is, again, the energy is used in the same place and produced in the same place in the cellular system.
To economize further, when the workload is not too excessive and the rate of energy generation is more than is needed, the extra energy is stored. If the rate of water flow is more than adequate, the extra energy that is manufactured is stored in the batteries, like the coal and coke dump reserves next to the power stations that manufacture and distribute electricity. The widely scattered batteries that store the extra energy are called adenosine triphosphate (ATP) and guanosine triphosphate (GTP). A third area where energy is stored is in the calcium dumps in the cells. These areas are known as endoplasmic reticulum.
So again, excess energy is converted into ATP and GTP. And also the energy is stored in a combination of two calcium cells, right? And then when the body needs it, it can draw from this energy.
Imagine a sump or bilge pipe in the basement of your house or in a ship that becomes directly energized by the rise in the level of water and is able to generate its own energy from the flow of that water through its system. Now imagine the water is not clear but has other substances floating in it. Please take one further step in the realm of imagination. Imagine you are a fish living in an intricately designed house in the middle of the ocean and all of your belongings are afloat. Imagine that you are particularly organized and wish to keep your house spick and span and prevent it from getting cluttered up by too many unwanted elements. You would install an automated house cleaning system, obviously powered by hydroelectricity. The human body has gone through all of these steps in the design of each of its many trillions of cells. It employs a type of bilge pump, the cation pump. Cation pumps maintain balance in the interior of the cells of the body. They use hydroelectric energy generated from the rush of water through them to take some elements outside the cell and assist in the transfer of the needed elements into the cells. They energize the cells by also making more power than they need for their own task. This extra energy is stored for later use. Extra energy is manufactured only when water supply and its pressure is adequate. All functions of the brain depend in a major way on this source of energy.
So again, when water supply is good, then the pumps move, creating more energy, and then it is naturally stored.
It is my understanding that the microtubules in the waterways of all cells, including the long nerves, are made of cation pumps that are stuck together. You now understand why the rush of water from the outside to the inside of the microtubules also turns all the energy dependent cation pumps that make up the microtubule. Next to oxygen, water is the most essential material for the efficient working of the brain. Water is a primary nutrient for all brain functions and transmission of information. This is why the brain is 85% water and is housed in a very special water bag that goes all the way down the spinal cord into the lower back. The use of cation pumps is not limited to the nervous system. They are employed in all the cells of the body, in their outer membranes, and in the membranes inside the cells.
So again, the cation pumps are there in every and each cell to produce the energy required by the cell.
A signal axon that is cut across shows the microtubules and the areas of more fluidity that seem to allow the existence of a float transport system along the line of the tube.
So neurotransmitters are getting transmitted through the nerve fibers.
A few years ago, I received a letter from a woman who is worth mentioning here. She wrote about a ear problem that is now cleared up. The story exemplifies my explanations of chronic dehydration and nerve damage. She was a young at heart, 71-year-old professional concert musician who taught at her local university. She was very health conscious, ate the right kinds of food, but drank green tea and only 2 cups of water a day, and did not take salt. She did exercise. One day she realized her left ear could not hear properly and had lost the ability to distinguish fine sounds. She went for ear tests at 2 different centers. Both reached the conclusion that she was suffering from some nerve deafness, which was not advanced enough to warrant her wearing a hearing aid. She wondered about acupuncture treatment and had 6 sessions of it, but it didn't help. Then she heard me on a radio interview explaining chronic dehydration as a major cause of so many health problems. She bought my book, Your Body's Main Cries for Water, and after reading it, began drinking more water. The result? After about a month, I found I could and still can hear the watch tick with my left ear. This simple observation on the nerve recovery by a person who was alert to the loss of an important function is an indication of how chronic dehydration can lead to devastating results and how correction of dehydration in time can reverse a potentially permanent pathology.
So again, when there's dehydration, the body has to monitor where the water will go. And in the process, certain bodily functions can start deteriorating, right? So again, adequate uh, hydration is again very, very important.
Dehydration, the cause of strokes. Talking about permanent pathology, let me tell you the story of my sister Shahla. We are a close family, and there is a particular bond between my sister and me. There is about 13 years difference between us. When we were studying in England, away from home and parents, I was in charge. Even in later stages of her life, whenever she needed to make a serious decision, she would consult with me. As a family, we emigrated to America when living in our homeland, Iran, became hazardous after the mullahs took over in 1979 and Iran became a theocratic dictatorship. Most of us gravitated to Northern Virginia. Sharla is a hard worker and a most reliable executive, and although she had a lot of upheaval in her life in exile, excuse me, she has not lost her cheerfulness and enthusiasm. She had recently started smoking despite my contrary advice. She had also taken a liking to a glass of red wine now and then. She had come to Virginia to work with my younger brother, who had established himself as a developer in the area. In the summer of 1989, Shala wanted to relax after a lot of turmoil in her emotional life. She decided to spend some time beside the pool of her apartment complex. She was also trying to lose weight. She would spend most of her free time and the weekends at the poolside in the sun. She would also take the occasional drink of wine as she was relaxing on her poolside mat, an ideal of many people who wish to have a quiet, relaxing holiday. On a Monday morning after a weekend by the pool, when she was working at her office, she noticed tingling sensations in her left arm. Gradually, the left side of her body became heavy and not sufficiently responsive. She got scared and called me. She left the office and was driven home. By the time I arrived, her left leg and left arm were in a state of partial paralysis. She could hardly move them. She was now dead scared. After a quick examination and a call to a doctor friend, I started to force water into her. I managed to give her 2 jugs of water and 1 jug of orange juice with some salt, about 6 quarts of fluids. Her anxiety began to diminish. By the time the doctor had arrived, her arm weakness had perceptibly improved and she also had some movement in her leg muscles. You might think that I should have called an ambulance and packed her off to the emergency room of a hospital. I did not do so because, other than receiving an intravenous drip to get some fluid into her, I believe she would have suffered other damage in the time she awaited medical attention. Anyway, she improved and improved and improved. By the late afternoon, she was well on her way to recovery. However, we needed to find out if there was any underlying local pathology in the brain that might have signaled its presence by manifesting muscle weakness on one side of her body. A consultation with one of the local neurologists was arranged, and we went to him for an in depth evaluation. After his examination, he confirmed a slight remaining weakness on the left side. Shala, was admitted to the hospital. After all the blood tests and non-invasive procedures such as CT scan and MRIs showed nothing, it was decided to do a cerebral angiogram to rule out a leaking aneurysm in the brain arteries. The procedure was conducted the next day. Her brain arteries were as clean as a whistle. No aneurysm, no plaque, no obstruction, nothing that could account for the temporary weakness on the left side of her body. They charged her $13,000 for 3 nights stay in the hospital. She did not yet have insurance to cover such expenses. Needless to say, what rest she had at the poolside, she paid for with her health and money. Why? Because of a basically wrong understanding of the way the human body works. She had severely dehydrated her brain by the intake of alcohol, heat of the sun, dieting without water intake, and the vicious cycle of the physiological events that are set in motion when there is a severe dehydration. What her brain had done was to decommission a major part of its activity that would take her to the location where she could continue the damage producing actions. Even in genuine situations when there is a blockage of the arteries in a region of the brain, resulting in rotting brain tissue, adequate intravenous hydration has produced dramatic recoveries. In experiments in animals, if intravenous fluids are given within 1 hour of blocking the main artery to a part of the brain that would permanently destroy about 20% of the blood deprived region, the rotting area will be reduced significantly. Such is the power of water in reviving even purposefully oxygen and circulation deprived areas of the brain.
Again, so water, if it reaches the places where there is inadequate water, it can become a very powerful healing agent for all sorts of things in our body.
This was the reason why I forced water on Shala as soon as I reached her. I thought that even if she had actually clotted one of the main arteries of her brain, the water would help open the surrounding capillaries and prevent expansion of the clot beyond its already formed areas. Equally, if the neurological manifestations were due to vascular spasm, then the water would relieve the constriction in the arteries, and it did. There was no time to wait and see. A decision and an action were vital at the very moment that Shala showed the onset of muscle weakness that was increasing. Today, she is well. She no longer smokes and drinks wine only on festive occasions, but drinks plenty of water, enough to give her lots of bubbly energy. Edmund, the husband of my office manager, a very young man, had exactly the same type of paralysis and was taken to the hospital. His wife, Joy, was informed of the devastating crisis in their family. I was nearby when she received the information. I asked her if Edmund drank enough water. Apparently, he would seldom drink water. I asked her to get him to drink lots of water straight away to prevent the damage from continuing. She did, and he recovered completely. It is now 4 years since that episode. The moral of these stories: give stroke candidates lots of water, if possible, before they actually develop clots and then neurological symptoms.
So again, water, right? Strokes, paralysis. If you have enough water, you can take care of it. So as soon as someone has these symptoms, the thing that we need to do is to make sure that the person is having adequate water.
Chapter 11: Hormones and Dehydration. Stress to the human body immediately translates into dehydration. In other words, stress equals dehydration and dehydration equals stress.
So this is
It,
very important, right? We have seen that whenever there's a stress in the environment also, let us say a door is not in a correct position or the wood in the door is not placed correctly. If you go near there, you'll find your mouth will start to dry up because there's a stress in the system. Immediately the body responds by sucking in the water. So dehydration and stress go hand in hand.
they both initiate the same series of physiological steps for crisis management. Immediate and automatic steps are taken to prepare the body for battle stations. The available body resources of water and food products will be distributed according to battle station requirements. How is this done? 5 major regulators become operatives of the system. These regulators have their individual codes, which are indicators of one or another mode of activity through their cascade of chemical reactions, much like the directives of a central command that are delivered to the commanders in the field.
So again, wherever the resources are required, the body will attempt to get the resources there.
Vasopressin. Vasopressin indicates a water shortage and a rationing of water delivery into the interior of certain cells according to a priority plan. It opens small holes in the cell membrane and forces water through the membrane so that cells sensitive to vasopressin will benefit more from the available water supply. This allows the brain, kidneys, livers, and other organs to maintain efficiency, particularly when the blood becomes more concentrated from the breakdown of muscle and fat. Vasopressin regulates water delivery into the cells until there is an unmistakable signal of abundant water supply for all body functions. Vasopressin also tightens the arterial system to put a squeeze on the blood volume to force serum out of the vessels. This enables some of the water content of the serum to enter the dehydrated cells through the holes in their membrane.
So again, there are spots in the membrane of the cell where the vasopressin can go in, and then the water can also go in. It goes there and creates a shower head. We read about it before, through which the water can go into the cellular system.
Once vasopressin becomes secreted, it acts as a strong on-off-on modulating stimulant for the release of cortisol. It is a very strong cortisone release factor. It is this action of vasopressin that converts persistent dehydration into a metabolic problem that can cause serious disruptions in the reserves of the body's essential elements.
Vasopressin causes the on-off, right? Now, if cortisol gets produced and it's not used in the system, it can become very toxic. So we have to be able to again hydrate enough so that cortisol unnecessarily doesn't get produced in the body system.
Cortisone release factor. Cortisone release factor promotes the secretion of hormones from the adrenal glands, which rest on top of the kidneys. Cortisone promotes the breakdown of proteins, fats, and stored starch into their primary components, some of which will be converted to sugar for brain use. This process will eventually deplete some of the essential amino acids, such as tryptophan and tyrosine, from the stored reserves of the body.
So if too much cortisol is there, it breaks down chemicals which are required for the brain and uses it in the body system itself.
As a result, many health problems that are the consequence of prolonged dehydration may develop. Cortisone directly suppresses the body's immune system. It is this mechanism that results in immune system suppression when the body becomes dehydrated and remains dehydrated. Production of interferon and interleukin 2, the vital activators of the immune system, is inhibited by cortisol.
So when cortisol is there, that means the fight and flight response of the body is activated. When that is activated, then the repair and maintenance processes of the body automatically get suppressed, right? Because the energy is posted to the hands and legs, because the fight and flight response makes you either fight or run, right? So naturally, the immunity system gets affected if there's too much of cortisol in the body system.
The lost essential elements are not easily replaceable. The body can become short of some of its most essential amino acid needs for protein manufacture. Some of this loss can become irreversible. Even if raw materials are made available at a later time, the same state of physiology as before may not be attainable. Thus, muscle activity to avert the damaging effect of stress is indispensable. Hence the need to walk, and walk. Increased water intake to avert the physiological damage of stress is even more important.
So again, when we are walking, we are using up the energy. So the adrenal and the cortisol in the system starts to get used because of physical activity, right? So that is one way of taking care of stress. That's why when people are stressed out, taking a walk is a good idea, right? And of course, water, the benefit of water drinking cannot be overemphasized to reduce the issues or the dehydration in the body system.
Endorphins. These are the natural opiates of the body. They bring about immediate pain relief at the time of battle. They enhance the efficiency of the body in the process of fight or flight. When the body is exposed to injury or great stress, endorphins are released. Bleeding and severe pain also promote endorphin release. Endorphins raise the pain threshold so the body is able to endure and effectively continue to function to the last moment, despite physical trauma.
So these are boosters of energy as well as a pain management system, the endorphins.
Long distance runners become dependent on the release of endorphins to continue until completion of a marathon race. When there is no injury or trauma, endorphin release translates to well being and gratification.
So again, you feel euphoric when the endorphins are released.
Women often have a much greater dependence on the endorphin codes for their pain relief, especially for the physically traumatic processes of pregnancy and childbirth. Generation after generation of women have passed this strong ability for the expression of endorphin code to their offspring. It has become a stronger part of the chromosome code for the female of all species, particularly humans. This is why women have a greater ability to endure pain than men, and also why they live longer.
So again, endorphins are produced more in women, right? They are able to manage pain much better than men.
Alcohol is a dehydrating agent. Furthermore, it inhibits the full and widespread actions of vasopressin, causing further dehydration. In women, alcohol initiates release of endorphins. The more alcohol that is consumed, the more endorphin high will be experienced as a consequence of cellular dehydration. The addictive property of alcohol is most probably the consequence of endorphin release from the process of establishing dehydration.
So again, that is why people get stuck to alcohol, because when endorphins are released, you start getting a high. But then it is causing more dehydration in the system, which is why we said previously that because of the dehydration, it can cause cellular damage in the brain, That's why drinking alcohol can cause problems in the whole body system because it really sucks up the water of the body.
Although the process is the same in men and women, in women it becomes more strongly and rapidly addictive than in men. The reason lies in the women's ability to activate more quickly the endorphin manufacturing system and its release in alcohol-induced stress. This is probably why women become addicted to alcohol in about 2 to 3 years, whereas men become addicted in about 7 years.
So this is why ladies need to be more careful while when they are consuming alcohol. So again, this is very well depicted of all the processes that is happening. Dehydration causes emotional stress, and any injury to the body also causes the release of these endorphins. And of course, women are producing these chemicals more than men.
Renin-angiotensin (RA). The RA system codes for water intake and its retention and distribution in the body by forcing a salt appetite and the collection of salt in the watery areas outside the cells. It is responsible for closing some of the blood vessels in the periphery so that the shunting of circulation to other more vital parts, according to a priority plan, can be established. It is also responsible for decreased urine production.
So again, what is happening, right? This system will control the water supply to areas of the body which are not vital if there is, again, dehydration. Just 1 second, Shivangla. Hold on, please.
It is produced in the kidneys, which play a part in water preservation of the body. The RA system is a focus of attention by the pharmaceutical industry in anti-hypertension therapy. Instead of giving the system more water to pass through the kidneys, chemical products are given to attempt to block the drive of the body for salt retention by the RA system.
So again, see, most of the time what happens is the allopathic medicines are inhibiting the regular functioning of the body system, which creates more problems than solutions, right? So we need to be aware of it, right? Unnecessarily drug taking is not a good idea for our body system.
Prolactin. Prolactin codes for breast gland cell stimulation and milk production. It coordinates with other hormone agents to maintain the reproductive organs of the body in a well-functioning state. The milk-producing tissue is a water-secreting gland, and its milk-watery secretory capability has to be maintained. Gland cells have to be activated and given secretory properties. If such cells are already formed and functioning, their activity has to be maintained. At times of stress, when the water rationing system becomes operative, breast function has to be maintained to feed the offspring of the species. In a very severe state of stress, the milk secretion property of the prolactin may not be enough and milk production may have to stop. There is a balancing mechanism involved.
So again, during stress, what happens is that the body has to maintain the milk secreting properties. But if over stress is there, then many times the mother's milk is not formed. Again, one of the main reasons is dehydration. Because if the mother is stressed out, then dehydration automatically starts taking place, as we just read in the previous section.
In chronic dehydration or ongoing low-grade stress, there may be a constant and ongoing effect on the breast tissue caused by the increasing amounts of stress-induced prolactin production. If the breast is already fully developed and has had past experience of milk production, the result may be an enlargement of the gland tissue. If the breast tissue is uninitiated or a long time has elapsed between its initial milk secretory learning period and the advent of stress, the result of stress-induced increased prolactin production may be cystic adenoma formation.
So cysts may form in the breast.
Over a longer period of time, the end result of stress dehydration induced increases in prolactin production may be cancer transformation of the adenoma tissue.
See, this is the reason why so many ladies get breast cancer.
By this time, because of other damaging effects of dehydration and protein loss, many other controlling and anti-cancer cell defense systems are already out of commission. The immune system is suppressed and interferon production is decreased as a result of too much cortisone release. I am of the opinion that cancer of the breast in the majority of women is the consequence of chronic dehydration associated with stress.
So again, that's why, again, hydration becomes a very, very important thing. Okay.
Prolactin secretion in the body is increased due to dehydration, stress, and excess aspartame, diet soda intake.
So again,
Excess
diet soda, right? Aspartame is not a good idea at all. There was the other book that we were reading because of the life system. And over there, aspartame is like absolutely no.
Excess prolactin has been shown to cause mammary tumors in mice.
I think we can stop here today.